Welcome to Sleepless Historian. If you enjoy this gentle journey into the past, please consider liking and subscribing. And remember to turn on loop, allowing this soothing narrative to envelop you again and again. Hey, now, as the lights dim softly around you, take a moment to settle into your space. Adjust your pillow, wrap yourself in a cozy blanket, and allow your breathing to slow. Inhale deeply and exhale gently. Feel your shoulders drop as you prepare to explore a most meticulous and tranquil corner of history. Today, we will delve into the seemingly mundane yet intricately detailed world of Roman Senate quill sharpening procedures. This was not merely a task, but an art of precision and dedication, a routine that contributed to the flow of communication in a vast empire. Little by little, we will uncover the steps taken to ensure each quill was perfectly honed for the careful transcription of laws, debates, and decrees. Imagine the senators seated in their togas, surrounded by scrolls and ink pots. Each quill, an extension of their thoughts, required attention. The sharpening process was a slow and methodical affair. First, the quills would be selected, typically crafted from the feathers of a goose. Each feather was chosen for its unique characteristics, ensuring an optimal writing experience. Once selected, the quills needed to be trimmed. This was done with great care, utilizing a small knife to create a fine point. The angle was vital. Too sharp, and the quill would tear the parchment. Too dull, and the ink would not flow. The senators understood this delicate balance. The quills would be tested against the parchment, ensuring that each stroke was fluid and precise. The ink, dark and rich, awaited the perfect quill to bring forth words of governance and wisdom. This was a quiet, repetitive process, echoing the steady rhythm of history itself. Each quill sharpened, little by little, each point perfected, contributed to the great tapestry of Roman administration. So, as you relax, let us drift into the details of this unassuming yet vital art. Feel your mind become serene as we explore the gentle intricacies of quill sharpening in the Roman Senate. Wow. The tools used for this meticulous task were simple yet effective. A small, curved knife, often called a penknife, was the primary instrument. The blade, not more than 2 inches in length, was honed to a fine edge. It fit comfortably in the hand, allowing for precision and control. Senators would often keep their penknives close, tucked within the folds of their togas or stored in humble leather sheaths. The workspace was equally important. Senators would gather in their chambers, where natural light streamed through windows, casting soft shadows across the polished wooden tables. Each table was accustomed to the presence of parchment, ink pots, and quills, all patiently waiting for their turn in the rhythm of governance. The senators would sit, comfortable and relaxed, perhaps leaning back slightly in their chairs as they prepared to engage in this calming ritual. The quill sharpening process began with proper storage. Quills were kept in a simple wooden box, often lined with soft cloth to prevent damage. Each feather retained its unique texture and flexibility, ready to serve when needed. Senators would select a quill, feeling its weight in their hand, admiring the smoothness of the shaft. Once a quill was chosen, the senator would carefully assess its condition. The tip would often need attention, a gentle inspection revealing any signs of wear or irregularities. If the tip appeared uneven, The senator would hold the quill in one hand while grasping the penknife in the other. The blade would glide against the quill, making deliberate, measured strokes. The senator would begin by cutting at an angle, typically around 45 degrees. This angle was crucial for ensuring proper ink flow. Each slice was made with patience and intent, the soft sound of the blade against the feather, creating a soothing backdrop. As the senator continued, they would occasionally pause to inspect their work. Holding the quill up to the light, they would examine the point closely. A well-sharpened quill would taper to a fine, precise tip, the edges smooth and even. If perfection was not achieved, the process would continue, little by little, until the quill was just right. Once sharpened, the quill was tested against a piece of parchment. A gentle stroke was made, allowing the ink to flow. The senator would watch closely, observing the lines formed on the smooth surface. If the ink flowed smoothly, they would smile softly, satisfied with their craftsmanship. If the ink was stubborn or the lines uneven, the senator would return to the sharpening process. Sometimes, a slight adjustment was all it took, a careful trimming of the quill's edge. Other times, the senator would reconsider the quill entirely, selecting another from the box, feeling its potential in their hands. This cycle of selection, sharpening, and testing could take several minutes. It was an exercise in mindfulness, a moment to focus solely on the task at hand. While senators engaged in discussions of policy and governance, the art of quill sharpening remained a solitary, serene practice. Once a quill was deemed satisfactory, it was placed into an ink pot, delicately dipped into the dark liquid. The ink was a mixture of soot and gum arabic, a blend that provided rich color and a smooth consistency. Senators would prepare only the finest ink, often purchased from skilled artisans. The price was modest, yet it was a valued investment in the art of communication. The ink pot itself was crafted of clay or glass, its surface polished to a high sheen. After dipping, the quill would be held at a slight angle above the parchment. Senators understood the importance of posture during this phase. A relaxed grip ensured a gentle touch, allowing for fluid movements across the page. As they wrote, they felt the quill glide, each stroke transferring thoughts into the permanence of ink. The senators often practiced etiquette while writing. They would maintain a calm environment, allowing fellow senators the space to concentrate. The soft sound of quills against parchment filled the air, a gentle symphony of productivity. Conversations were kept to a minimum, respectful of the focus required for the task. This collective respect for the quill sharpening process fostered a sense of community among the senators. They understood that the written word held power. Each document crafted was a reflection of their thoughts and a testament to their responsibilities. A senator might spend an afternoon sharpening several quills, preparing for a day of correspondence and decisions. Each quill was tailored to different tasks. Some were meant for careful notations, while others were intended for longer letters, where a smooth flow was essential. The quills would be stored neatly alongside the ink pots, creating a harmonious workspace. Senators took pride in their tools, often sharing tips and techniques with one another. The process of sharpening quills became a topic of discussion, with senators exchanging their insights on angles, techniques, and even the best types of feathers. Occasionally, a younger senator would seek guidance from a more experienced colleague. In these moments, the older senator would demonstrate the technique, their movements slow and deliberate. They would explain the nuances of angle and pressure, the importance of a steady hand. Little by little, they would guide the younger senator in the art of quill sharpening, passing down knowledge like a cherished heirloom. Oh, easy. As the afternoon light waned, the senators would take a moment to reflect on their day's work. The quills, now perfectly sharpened, awaited their next use. There was a sense of tranquility in the air, a shared understanding of the craft that bound them together. Time moved gently, marked not by urgency, but by the rhythmic flow of ink and the soft rustle of parchment. Each senator, in their own way, contributed to the greater narrative of governance, their words forever etched in time. And so, the process of quill sharpening continued, a comforting routine in the life of the Roman Senate. Each senator embraced this quiet art, understanding that it was not merely a task, but a connection to their thoughts and to each other. This delicate interplay of feather, ink, and parchment formed the foundation of their collective legacy. A legacy built on precision, reflection, and the gentle power of the written word. And Monotonous. As the senators settled into their tasks, the tools of their trade became a focal point. Each senator maintained a small wooden box, meticulously crafted to hold their quills and sharpening tools. The boxes, often made from fine cedar or oak, bore the gentle patina of age, the surfaces smooth from years of handling. Each box was fitted with compartments, lined with soft cloth to cushion the delicate quills. There was an unspoken etiquette concerning these boxes. A senator would never touch another's without permission, a mark of respect for the craftsmanship and the personal connection to the tools within. In the black, the quills themselves, sourced from local birds, were selected for their size and flexibility. Senators preferred goose quills for their length and sturdiness, while others favored raven quills for their finer point. Each quill was inspected carefully before use. A quick squeeze between the fingers determined its resilience. A well-chosen quill could mean the difference between a smooth flow of ink and an uneven script. To sharpen a quill, a senator would first lay out their tools. They would reach for a small, sharp knife, its blade honed to a fine edge over many years. This knife was often passed down through families, a silent witness to countless writings and thoughts. The blade gleamed softly in the dim light of the Senate chamber, reflecting a commitment to precision and careful craftsmanship. Senators understood that the angle of the blade was crucial. A tilt too steep could lead to a jagged point, while a lazy angle could yield a blunt tip. With a measured hand, the senator would grasp the quill between their fingers, feeling the weight of the feather against their skin. This tactile connection was essential to the process. They would begin the sharpening by drawing the knife across the quill, starting near the base and moving toward the tip. Each stroke was deliberate, each motion slow and steady. As they sharpened, senators would often engage in quiet conversation, sharing thoughts on matters of state or reflecting on their families. The sound of the knife gliding over the quill would harmonize with their soft voices, creating a soothing ambience. This ritual of sharpening became a meditative practice, a way to focus the mind while preparing for the weight of the written word. Once the quill was sufficiently sharpened, the senator would hold it up to the light. They would inspect the point, ensuring that it was even and true. A well-sharpened quill had a delicate taper, leading to a fine point that could create elegant script. Senators took pride in their work. A beautiful quill would translate into beautiful writing. The senators also understood the importance of ink. They would keep small jars of ink, often made from natural dyes, The ink was prepared with great care, mixed in accordance with specific recipes passed down through generations. Ingredients included gall nuts, which provided rich black hues, and various other plant-based solutions that created shades of brown and blue. Storage was equally important. These jars were stored in cool, dark places to prevent spoilage. Senators would often schedule times to refresh their ink supplies, ensuring that their jars were never empty. After sharpening, the quills would be carefully placed back into their boxes, each one nestled with care among the other tools. Senators often had a preferred quill for particular tasks. Some favored a specific quill for drafting important decrees, while others reserved different quills for more casual correspondence. This routine of organization was not merely functional. It was part of the senator's identity. The process of quill sharpening could take several minutes, depending on the senator's expertise and the condition of the quill. A novice might take longer, requiring guidance from a more experienced colleague. They would watch closely as the seasoned senator demonstrated the technique, absorbing the nuances of pressure and speed. Each detail mattered, and the attentive student would practice the motions, replicating them until they felt confident. During these moments, time seemed to stretch. The rhythmic sound of sharpening blended with the ambient murmurs of discussion, creating a cocoon of calm within the Senate chamber. Senators would breathe deeply, allowing the gentle atmosphere to settle around them. They understood that the art of sharpening was not just about preparing tools. It was a moment of connection, a shared experience that strengthened their bonds. Dari moyane, awasiwa, genne, da. Shadi say, yeah. Once a quill was sharpened to perfection, it was ready for use. The senators would dip the fine point into their ink jars, allowing the quill to absorb just the right amount of liquid. An oversaturated quill could lead to messy letters, while an undersaturated quill could result in fading strokes. This balance required an intuitive understanding, developed over years of practice. As the senators began to write, the soft sound of quills scratching against parchment filled the air. Each stroke was deliberate, each letter crafted with care. The ink would flow smoothly, and the senators felt a sense of satisfaction as their thoughts transformed into written words, forever captured on the page. In between writings, senators would pause, resting their quills on the parchment. They would allow their minds to wander and reflect, contemplating not only their words, but the weight of their decisions. The act of writing became a meditation, a quiet moment in a bustling world. The senators would also take time to clean their quills after each session. A small cloth, often made of soft linen, was used to wipe the tip, ensuring that no dried ink would disrupt future writings. This routine, though simple, was a gesture of respect toward the quill and the craft itself. Each senator knew that a well-maintained quill would serve them faithfully through countless debates and decisions. As the day wore on, the senators would gather for their evening discussions, their sharpened quills ready at hand. They would sit together, surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight, sharing thoughts on governance, philosophies, and the future of Rome. The quills, now perfectly prepared, awaited their next use, resting quietly on their desks. The senators embraced this tranquil atmosphere, a soothing end to their day of reflection and deliberation. The gentle act of quill sharpening and the creation of ink had woven a tapestry of connection, a shared experience among them all. They understood that, in this delicate art, they found not only the means to govern, but also a sense of peace amidst the weight of their responsibilities. And so, little by little, The evening would unfold, marked by the steady flow of ink and the soft rustle of parchment, each senator contributing to the greater narrative with their sharpened quills and thoughtful words. Nay. As the senators settled into their evening discussions, the atmosphere became a serene sanctuary, a space carved out for contemplation. Each senator, having attended to their quills with care, now turned their focus to the tools of their trade, the ink and parchment. The ink, a rich blend of carbon, water, and gum arabic, was stored in small glass vials, each one carefully corked to prevent evaporation. The vials, with their smooth surfaces and rounded bases, were stacked neatly on wooden shelves, each labeled with the date of preparation and the type of ink contained within. Then, the ink, prepared in small batches, typically measured around 2 ounces, enough for several sessions of writing. This precise quantity allowed the senators to keep their discussions uninterrupted, enabling a steady flow of ideas. They knew that a consistent ink supply was essential for their debates, ensuring clarity in their communications. When the senators required more ink, they would gather around the ink-making table, a sturdy wooden surface lined with ink-stained cloths. There, they would measure out the ingredients with care. A fine balance was required, typically 1 part carbon to 2 parts water, combined with just a hint of gum arabic to enhance the viscosity. They would stir the mixture slowly with a wooden spoon, allowing the elements to meld together smoothly. Once the mixture was complete, it would rest for a few hours, allowing the components to settle. This resting period was crucial. It ensured that the ink would flow evenly from the quill, preventing blots and smudges during their important discussions. The senators understood that the quality of their ink directly impacted the quality of their writing. To store their quills, each senator had a dedicated quill box, often made of polished cedar or mahogany, their surfaces smooth and inviting to the touch. Inside, the quills were arranged in neat rows, each resting in a bed of soft linen. The quills, harvested from the feathers of geese or swans, were chosen for their flexibility and durability. Senators preferred larger feathers, as they provided a wider nib and greater ink flow, essential for the more extensive writings they often undertook. The senators would take care to inspect their quills regularly, ensuring they remained in optimal condition. Each quill was cleaned after every use, rinsed gently in water to remove any residual ink. They would then be laid to dry on a cloth, their points carefully protected to prevent damage. This gentle maintenance was a testament to their respect for both the quill and the craft of writing. As the evening continued, some senators took the time to engage in informal discussions about their choices of quills. They noted the slight variations in texture, the way each quill responded to the pressure of their hand, and the unique flow of ink each one offered. Such conversations, though seemingly mundane, deepened their appreciation for the tools that facilitated their governance. The time spent attending to their quills was woven into their evening routine. After sharpening and cleaning, they would often take a moment to reflect. They would close their eyes briefly, breathing deeply and feeling the weight of their responsibilities. This practice of quiet reflection was as important as the act of writing itself. It allowed them to gather their thoughts, to prepare their minds for the words that would soon flow from their sharpened quills. Wah! In the background, the flickering candlelight cast soft shadows across the room, providing a rhythmic ambience that complemented their peaceful preparation. The senators enjoyed this tranquility, a stark contrast to the bustling activities of the day. They cherished these moments, rich with the scent of wax and wood, an invitation to slow down. With their quills sharpened and their ink prepared, the senators would then select their parchment. The parchment itself, made from the skins of sheep or goats, was a tactile delight. It bore a soft, textured surface, ideal for holding ink. Each sheet was carefully measured to size, typically around 8 by 12 inches, a convenient format for both writing and storage. They would run their fingers over the edges, feeling the smoothness that promised a seamless writing experience. When writing began, each senator approached the parchment with a sense of purpose. They would dip their quill into the ink, allowing it to absorb just the right amount. Not too much, lest it drip, and not too little, as to risk a faint line. The senators were meticulous, calibrating their movements with soothing precision. Wayne. With each stroke of the quill against the parchment, a sense of rhythm emerged. The soft scratching sound was like a lullaby, a gentle reminder of the thoughts flowing seamlessly from mind to paper. A typical session could last several hours, during which they would pause to converse, reflect, and refine their ideas. The senators would take care to arrange their writing in a clear, legible hand. The letters formed were elegant yet functional, a blend of aesthetics and utility. They understood the importance of clarity, knowing that their words would be scrutinized, discussed, and debated. Each letter, each word, was a building block in the foundation of their governance. Why? When say, or no one why. As the discussions unfolded, they would often revisit their quills. A gentle sharpening mid-session was common, a quick adjustment to maintain precision. This would involve a small handheld knife, its blade honed to a fine edge. With a few delicate strokes, the quill's tip would be refined, ensuring that it continued to deliver ink smoothly. The senators enjoyed a ritualistic approach to this process. They would take turns, sharing the knife and allowing one another to hone their quills as they engaged in conversation. This exchange was more than mere practicality. It was a bonding experience, a shared understanding of their roles and responsibilities. The atmosphere remained calm and focused, punctuated by the quiet sounds of quill on parchment and the occasional soft murmur of conversation. With every sharpened quill, the senators became more attuned to the nuances of their discussions, each word carefully crafted, each idea delicately expressed. As evening wore on, the gentle glow of the candles flickered low, casting a warm light on their writing spaces. The senators continued to engage thoughtfully, their sharpened quills resting momentarily on the parchment, allowing silent pauses to punctuate their exchanges. This slow, deliberate cadence created an environment conducive to reflection and understanding, a space where thoughts could blossom and take shape. And so the evening extended, filled with the soft rustle of parchment, the quiet flow of ink, and the rhythmic sounds of quills meeting paper. They cherished this time together, knowing each moment spent in preparation. Each gentle stroke of their quills was a small but significant part of their shared legacy. As the senators settled into their evening routine, the remnants of their sharpened quills lay neatly aligned on the polished oak table before them. Each quill, a delicate instrument crafted from the finest feathers, held the potential to transform thought into written word. The senators understood that the quality of their writing depended on the precision of their tools. Therefore, the art of quill sharpening was not only a necessary task, but also an essential ritual, one that required patience and attention to detail. The senators would begin by selecting the right quill, ensuring it was free from defects. The ideal quill was supple yet sturdy, with a fine tip that could delicately scribe letters and words. The feathers, sourced from geese or swans, were often kept in specially designated storage containers, lined with soft fabric to prevent damage. This gentle handling was paramount, for a damaged quill could lead to uneven lines and unsatisfactory ink flow. Once selected, the senators would reach for their sharpening tools. A simple yet effective knife, often crafted from bronze or iron, was the preferred choice for this task. The blade was honed to a fine edge, allowing for precise cuts. Each senator had their own preferred method, but the foundational technique remained consistent. With careful hands, they would hold the quill in one hand and the knife in the other, positioning the quill at a slight angle for optimal sharpening. The senators would begin by making a shallow cut at the tip of the quill, removing only a small portion of the feather. This initial cut was crucial, for it shaped the point that would ultimately meet the parchment. Drawing the blade downward in a smooth motion, they would feel the resistance of the quill yielding to the knife, the soft sound of feather scraping against metal, creating a soothing rhythm. Slowly and gently, they would continue this process, repeating the cut several times, each stroke deliberate and measured. After achieving the desired point, they would then focus on the nib, the part of the quill that would hold ink. This required an additional, more delicate adjustment. With gentle precision, the senators would taper the sides of the nib, ensuring it was not too wide, allowing ink to flow freely yet consistently. The sound of the blade gliding over the feather was harmonious, echoing softly within the dimly lit chamber. Once the quill was sharpened to perfection, the senators would inspect their work. They would hold the quill up to the light, examining the tip for any irregularities. A well-sharpened quill would have a clean, smooth point, ready to transform thoughts into words. Satisfied, they would place the sharpened quill beside their inkpot, a small ceramic vessel filled with a rich, dark ink. The ink was made from a blend of soot and water, occasionally mixed with a binding agent such as gum arabic, to enhance its flow and adherence to the parchment. Oh, eristi, daikin, papome, sign. Designate. The inkpot itself was an elegant piece, often adorned with intricate patterns that reflected the artistry of the senator's work. It was essential that the ink was stored in a cool, dark place, as sunlight could cause it to dry out or alter its consistency. The senators would take care to seal the inkpot tightly when not in use, preserving the quality of their precious writing medium. With the quill sharpened and the ink prepared, the senators would gather their parchments. The parchment was often made from carefully processed animal skins, smoothed and treated to create a suitable writing surface. Each sheet was measured to a consistent size, typically around 8 by 12 inches, allowing for ample space to express ideas while maintaining a manageable format. They would lay the sheets flat on the table, stacking them neatly to avoid any creases or folds that might disturb the writing process. As they settled into their writing, the senators adhered to a rhythm, a gentle flow of ink and quill upon parchment. Each senator had their own writing style, yet they all shared a common respect for the craft. Writing was an art form, and every stroke of the quill reflected their thoughts and intentions. The senators often took turns reading aloud from their writings, allowing for an exchange of ideas and constructive feedback. This was a cherished tradition, one that fostered camaraderie and deeper understanding among them. The act of reading aloud transformed the quiet room into a space of shared knowledge, each senator's voice contributing to a tapestry of thought. The soft, melodic sounds of their speech harmonized with the gentle scratching of quills, creating a tranquil atmosphere. Time seemed to stretch as the evening wore on, the candles flickering softly, casting a warm glow over their shared workspace. As they paused to contemplate their words, they would often return to the task of quill sharpening. It was a comforting ritual, a moment of calm amidst the flow of ideas. Each senator understood that a well-maintained quill was a reflection of their commitment to their responsibilities. The act of sharpening became a meditative practice, allowing them to clear their minds and focus on the task at hand. Slowly and gently, they would repeat the process, ensuring their tools remained in peak condition, ready for the next round of thoughtful discourse. The senators took note of the subtle changes in the quill as they sharpened. They learned to appreciate the unique characteristics of each feather, the way it felt in their hands, the slight differences in flexibility, and how each quill interacted with the ink. Some feathers would yield a broader stroke, while others would create fine, delicate lines. This understanding deepened their appreciation for the written word, and they embraced the nuances of their craft. Demaro. Storage of the quills was another important aspect of their routine. Once sharpened, each quill would be placed in a designated holder, often fashioned from wood or ceramic, designed to keep the quills upright and safe. This holder would be placed close to their writing space, within easy reach, ensuring they could access their tools without disruption. The way the quills nestled together, feathers aligned and tips protected, provided a sense of order and calm. The senators often engaged in discussions about the best practices for quill maintenance. They would share insights on various sharpening techniques, the benefits of particular feather types, and even the best times of day for writing. Their conversations, though seemingly mundane, were filled with wisdom, each senator contributing their experiences and preferences. In the quiet moments, when the room was filled only with the soft sounds of quills and ink, they would find a shared rhythm, a gentle flow that mirrored the act of writing itself. The evening continued, each senator immersed in their own thoughts yet connected through the shared experience of refining their tools. Slowly and gently, they embraced the tranquility of the task, knowing that with each sharpened quill, they were crafting not only words, but also their legacy. Now, Johnny, Shiggy, the senators, settled into their ritual, would begin the process of quill sharpening with care and precision. They would gather their tools, the sharpeners crafted from fine stone or metal, each designed with a slight curve to accommodate the quill's natural form. The senators preferred a particular type of whetstone, one that had a smooth surface, allowing for a gentle sharpening action. The whetstone was often about 6 inches long, a perfect size for comfortable handling. It would be kept in a small, decorated box when not in use, ensuring that the stone remained free from dust and other debris. The box itself, made of polished cedar wood, emitted a faint, pleasant aroma, pairing nicely with the ink and parchment that filled the room. To begin the sharpening, the senator would first select a quill from their holder, often a lightweight feather from a goose or a swan. The quill's shaft was typically around 12 inches long, with a delicate curve that spoke to its carefully selected origin. After holding the quill, the senator would inspect the tip, ensuring it was suitable for writing. If the tip were frayed or damaged, they would take a moment to prepare for sharpening. The senator would then place the quill against the whetstone, angling it at approximately 30 degrees. This angle was crucial, as it allowed for the creation of a fine point, essential for the intricate writing that characterized Roman correspondence. With a gentle hand, the senator would glide the quill across the whetstone, applying light pressure. Slowly and gently, the quill would begin to transform, the fibers aligning to form a sharp edge. This process of sharpening would take a few moments, often accompanied by soft murmurs of appreciation for the craftsmanship of the tool. The senators would often discuss the ideal length of the quill's tip, with some preferring a longer point for broader strokes, while others favored a shorter tip for fine details. These preferences, shared among their peers, fostered a sense of camaraderie, each senator learning from the other's experiences. Once the quill had reached the desired sharpness, the senator would inspect it closely. Holding it up to the light, they would closely examine the tip, ensuring that it was symmetrical and precise. A well-sharpened quill should taper evenly, allowing for smooth transitions as the senator transitioned from one letter to the next. After examining the quill, it would be time for the next step, testing the quill on a scrap piece of parchment. The senator would dip the quill into their inkwell, a small vessel often made of clay or glass, filled with a rich black ink. The ink was carefully prepared, made from soot mixed with water and a binding agent, ensuring a smooth consistency. Dipping the quill, they would observe how the ink flowed, checking for any inconsistencies or blots. The senators often kept their inkwells close at hand on the writing table or perhaps in a drawer, within easy reach. Each inkwell had its own unique design, reflecting the individual tastes of the owner. The weight of the inkwell varied, some made of heavier glass for stability, while others were lighter for ease of movement. After testing the quill, should it not meet their expectations, the senator would return to the whetstone, adjusting the angle or pressure as needed. The sharpening was both an art and a science, requiring patience and a gentle touch. Senators would often remark that the act of sharpening was a meditative experience, allowing them to clear their minds and focus on the task at hand. Slowly and gently, they would lose themselves in the rhythm of the task, sharpening, testing, and refining. I see. As the evening progressed, the senators would occasionally pause to admire their collection of quills, each uniquely crafted and sharpened to their specifications. They would often store their sharpened quills in a compartmentalized box, a delightful addition to their writing space. This box would have individual slots for each quill, keeping them organized and ready for use. The senators took great pride in their collection, knowing that each quill represented not only a tool, but a piece of their legacy. The box would often be adorned with intricate carvings, depicting scenes from Roman life or honoring the gods. This added a touch of artistry to the mundane task of quill sharpening. Each senator understood the importance of aesthetics, believing that a beautiful space could inspire creativity and thoughtful writing. The process of quill sharpening was seldom rushed. Senators would set aside a specific time in their daily schedule, often early in the morning or late in the afternoon, to sharpen their quills. This routine became a cherished ritual, a moment to prepare for the day's correspondence or to reflect on the day's events. They would gather in the quiet of their chambers, sometimes joining one another for shared sharpening sessions. The soothing sounds of whetstones on quills created a soft, rhythmic background, allowing for gentle conversations about politics, philosophy, and their personal lives. The atmosphere was one of calm and camaraderie as they immersed themselves in the simple yet profound act of caring for their writing tools. As evening fell, the senators would often light a small oil lamp, casting a warm, flickering glow across their writing desks. This soft light illuminated their quills and inkwells, creating a cozy haven for concentration. With each flicker of the flame, they felt a sense of comfort, knowing that the tools they had nurtured would serve them well in their endeavors. The senators understood that a well-maintained quill was not just a matter of practicality. It symbolized their dedication to the craft of writing, to the art of communication. The tips of the quills, sharp and precise, would be the instruments through which their thoughts and ideas would flow, reaching the ears of fellow senators and citizens alike. And so, the process of quill sharpening became a cherished part of their daily lives. Each senator, in their quiet moments, would revel in the simplicity of the task. They understood that it was these small, deliberate actions that held the power to shape history, to influence the course of their beloved republic. Slowly and gently, they embraced the tranquility of the task, knowing that with each sharpened quill, they were crafting not only words, but also their legacy. The senators, nestled in their chambers, began their quill sharpening rituals with a deep sense of purpose. To prepare for the task, they would first gather their essential tools. The primary instrument, of course, was the quill itself, typically made from the sturdy feathers of geese or swans. These feathers were prized not only for their durability, but also for the delicacy of their tips, which allowed for fine, precise writing. As they sat at their desks, they would often have a small wooden box nearby. This box was specifically designed for the storage of their quills. Inside, they kept a collection of quills in various stages of use. Some were freshly prepared, their tips still sharp and pristine, while others required attention, their tips worn down by the daily rigors of political discourse. The box itself was lined with soft cloth to protect the delicate quills from accidental damage. Next to the box, an inkwell awaited its turn to contribute to the senator's tasks. The inkwell was typically made of clay or glass, its surface gleaming softly in the lamp's glow. It would be filled with a mixture of soot, water, and gum arabic, creating a rich, dark ink that flowed smoothly from the quill's tip. A senator would dip the quill into the inkwell, allowing the tip to absorb just the right amount of ink, a delicate balance, requiring practice and patience. Before the actual sharpening began, the senators would often take a moment to inspect their quills. They would hold the quill between their fingers, feeling its weight and flexibility. A well-chosen quill, perfect for the task at hand, would inspire confidence, while a subpar quill might lead to frustration. This moment of contemplation was essential. It grounded them in their task and prepared them for what was to come. Once satisfied with their selection, they would reach for a sharpening tool, often a simple knife or a specialized quill knife. The blade of this knife was particularly important. It needed to be sharp enough to create a fine point without splintering the delicate quill shaft. Senators had their preferences. Some favored a straight edge, while others preferred a curved blade. Each senator had their own method, honed over years of practice. Gently, they would begin the sharpening process. Holding the quill firmly in one hand, they would position the knife at a precise angle against the quill's tip. It was crucial to maintain a consistent angle. Too steep, and the quill would become overly pointed. Too shallow, and it would remain blunt. With measured strokes, they would glide the knife along the tip, carefully removing small shavings of feather. This process was not rushed. It required focus and a steady hand. As the senators sharpened, they would often close their eyes momentarily, breathing deeply and evenly. They would remind themselves of the importance of this mundane task. Each stroke of the knife was a meditation, a repetition of purpose imbued with significance. Slowly and gently, they would repeat this process, turning the quill ever so slightly until a fine point emerged. The senators understood that the process of sharpening a quill was an art form, one that could not be hurried. The ideal quill would taper to a delicate point, allowing the ink to flow with just enough pressure. They would often test the quill by writing a few strokes on a scrap of parchment. This test was essential. It allowed them to check if the quill was adequately sharpened, if the ink flowed smoothly, and if the writing felt comfortable in their hand. If the quill did not meet their expectations, they would return to the sharpening stone. This stone, often made from fine grit materials, was typically kept nearby. It provided a consistent surface for final adjustments. With gentle circular motions, they would refine the tip further, taking care to maintain the delicate balance between flexibility and precision. Each senator had their preferred technique, but the end goal remained the same. A perfect quill would yield perfect words. Once they were satisfied, they would place the freshly sharpened quill back into its designated spot in the wooden box. The senators took great care to ensure that the quills were stored upright, as this prevented any further damage to the delicately shaped tips. A quill, they knew, was not merely an object. It was a companion in their intellectual endeavors, a vessel for their thoughts. For the senators, the act of quill sharpening was often accompanied by a routine of conversation. They would gather in small groups, sharing tips on their techniques or discussing the merits of different types of quills. Some preferred quills with longer shafts for greater control, while others favored shorter ones for ease of handling. The discussions were soft-spoken, laced with camaraderie, as they exchanged experiences and personal preferences. Occasionally, a senator would bring in a special quill, perhaps one that had been gifted to them by a respected colleague. They would share the story behind it, recounting the circumstances of its acquisition and the significance it held. This storytelling added another layer to the ritual, enriching the experience of sharpening quills with shared memories and connections. The senators, immersed in the warmth of the flickering light, would listen attentively, their minds lulled into a state of peaceful contemplation. She was in. The entire process of quill sharpening could take anywhere from a few minutes to half an hour, depending on the state of the quill and the senator's preferences. Some senators, who took particular pride in their quills, might spend longer perfecting every detail. They would repeat the motions, adjusting their angles slightly, testing the point, and sharpening again. This rhythmic process became almost hypnotic. Slowly and gently, they would breathe, feeling the weight of history resting in their hands, aware that each quill they sharpened contributed to the fabric of their republic. As the evening wore on and the oil lamps burned low, the senators would find solace in the quiet satisfaction of their work. The room would be filled with the soft sounds of quills meeting parchment, the gentle scraping of blades against feathers, and the occasional murmur of agreement or laughter. This tranquility, this shared appreciation for the art of quill sharpening, created an atmosphere of calm and focus. The act itself became a meditation, a moment to pause and reflect amidst the bustling demands of political life. In this way, quill sharpening became not merely a task to be completed, but a cherished ritual, a time to breathe, to connect, and to prepare their minds for the important work ahead. The senators, in their quiet chambers, took comfort in the knowledge that with each sharpened quill, they were ready to craft not just words, but the future of their beloved republic. Slowly and gently, they embraced the rhythm of their routines, allowing the soothing process to wash over them, grounding them in their duties and their legacy. They, the senators, settled into their routine, each person embracing their designated role in the quill sharpening process. The tools required were simple, yet precise. Each senator would require a small, sturdy knife, typically crafted from bronze or iron, with a blade measuring approximately 3 to 4 inches in length. The handle, often made from polished wood or bone, was shaped to fit comfortably in the hand, ensuring a steady grip throughout the task. At the start of each session, the senators would lay out their materials upon a large, flat surface. They would prepare clean sheets of parchment to test the sharpness of their newly sharpened quills. The quills themselves, sourced from geese or swans, were chosen for their resilience and smooth, flexible feathers. Senators took great care to select quills that displayed a natural curve, as this would allow for optimal ink flow and ease of writing. The process of sharpening the quills began with a gentle inspection. Each senator would closely examine the tips of their quills, ensuring that there were no fractures or imperfections. With a soft touch, they would hold the quill in one hand, while the other hand guided the knife with practiced precision. The blade would be drawn along the tip of the feather, making short, deliberate strokes. Slowly and gently, the senators would work to create a fine point, honing the quill's tip to a delicate sharpness. This meticulous work was not rushed. Each senator would take their time, allowing the rhythm of their actions to create a meditative state. It was essential to maintain an angle of approximately 30 degrees between the blade and the quill, ensuring that the resulting point was both sharp and durable. The senators understood that an improperly sharpened quill could lead to frustration during their writing sessions, as it would either produce uneven ink flow or become too brittle to withstand the pressure of their writing style. Why? As the senators continued their work, they would often engage in soft conversation, sharing insights about their preferred methods or discussing the subtleties of quill maintenance. This camaraderie helped reinforce the importance of their craft. The senators would exchange tips on which feathers yielded the best quills, or which brands of ink provided the richest colors. A blend of soot and gum arabic was often favored, as it produced an ink that flowed smoothly, creating sharp, clear letters upon the parchment. Once the senators had sharpened their quills, they would perform a simple test. They would dip the tip into a small inkwell, carefully filled with their chosen ink. The inkwell, typically made of clay or glass, was kept on the same surface where the senators sharpened their quills. It was essential to keep the ink at a consistent level, neither too full nor too empty, as this could affect the writing experience. Next, each senator would take a moment to write a few lines upon the clean parchment, testing the sharpness and ink flow of their quills. The soft scratch of feather on parchment filled the room, blending with the calming ambience of the oil lamps flickering nearby. This was a sacred moment, a brief communion between the senators and their instruments, as they confirmed that their quills were indeed prepared for the important discussions that lay ahead. Should a quill prove unsatisfactory, the senators would not hesitate to return to their sharpening process. They maintained a dedicated drawer for spare quills, the feathers neatly arranged, allowing for easy access when needed. Each quill was labeled according to the type of feather, ensuring the senators could quickly select their preferred tool. This drawer, lined with soft fabric, protected the quills from damage, preserving their quality for future use. Why? A senator's workspace was not merely a place for quill sharpening, but rather a sanctuary of sorts. The surfaces were often adorned with small containers holding various supplies, a small pot of beeswax for occasional feather conditioning, a cloth for cleaning ink smudges, and a fine sand for smoothing out rough edges on newly sharpened tips. Each item served a purpose, contributing to the overall efficiency of the quill preparation routine. Quill sharpening sessions were typically scheduled to occur in the hours leading up to their meetings. This timing allowed for ample preparation, ensuring each senator entered discussions equipped with well-maintained tools. The senators would agree upon a specific time each week to gather for this practice, reinforcing their collective dedication to the craft. This weekly ritual became a point of tradition, marking the passage of time within their political endeavors. As the evening grew darker and shadows danced on the walls, the senators would gather around the table, sharpening quills in unison. Each senator would bring their own personality to the practice, some preferring the soft flicker of candlelight, while others relished the steady glow of oil lamps. The light would cast a warm radiance upon their hands as they worked. Ah, aye. The senators understood the importance of maintaining a peaceful atmosphere during these moments. They would often remind each other to breathe slowly, allowing the soothing process of quill sharpening to calm their minds. Each senator would take a moment to settle into their seat, loosening their shoulders and focusing on the gentle rhythm of their work. As they continued to sharpen their quills, the senators would often find themselves lost in thought. Their minds would wander to the debates and discussions awaiting them. They understood that their sharpened quills would soon translate into words of wisdom, decisions that impacted the lives of many. The act of quill sharpening gave them a sense of control, a moment of preparation before confronting the challenges of governance. The final touch in the quill sharpening routine involved a careful inspection of each quill once more. Senators would hold the quills up to the light, inspecting the tips for any imperfections. Only once satisfied with their craftsmanship would they place their quills into the designated holders, aligning them in neat rows. Each holder, crafted from polished wood, served as both a display and a reminder of their commitment to the art of writing. Once completed, the senators would take a moment to admire their work. The sight of neatly sharpened quills, ready for their use, brought a sense of accomplishment. This calm satisfaction enveloped them, reinforcing the tranquility of their shared ritual. As the oil lamps flickered gently, the senators would prepare to transition from this peaceful task to the important discussions that awaited them, their minds filled with clarity and purpose. Slowly and gently, they would rise from their seats, taking with them the calmness and focus cultivated during their quill sharpening session. Each senator understood that the art of quill sharpening was not merely a mundane task, but rather a vital part of their identity, a practice that grounded them in their shared purpose. After the senators had carefully arranged their quills, they would gently set about gathering the necessary tools for the next phase of their writing ritual. They would reach for their ink pots, which were made of fine clay, some glazed in deep colors like cobalt blue or rich burgundy. Others were simple earthenware, left unadorned but functional. Each ink pot held a mixture of finely ground carbon, black, and water, creating a deep, velvety ink perfect for their needs. The senators knew that the quality of their ink was just as vital as the sharpness of their quills. As they settled back into their seats, each senator would carefully lift their ink pot and dip a small brush into the inky depths. This brush, crafted from soft animal hair, allowed for a gentle application of ink to the quill's nib. The senators would take their time, slowly and deliberately painting the ink over the sharpened tip of the quill, ensuring it was fully saturated. They understood that too much ink could lead to unsightly blobs on the parchment, while too little would result in faint, unreadable strokes. Finding that perfect balance was crucial, a dance of precision and patience. Once the quills were adequately inked, they would lay them down on a soft cloth, allowing the ink to settle. It was customary for senators to use a cloth made from fine linen, soft to the touch and gentle on the freshly sharpened quills. The senators would take care not to touch the tips of the quills to avoid smudging the ink, which would mar the beauty of their work. They would wait a few moments, allowing the ink to adhere to the quill's surface, soaking into the delicate fibers. Hey, in this tranquil environment, senators would sometimes pause to discuss the materials they used for their ink. The best ink was not merely a product of mixing, but rather a careful selection of ingredients. They spoke of the various sources of carbon, discussing the merits of soot from oil lamps versus that from burned wood. Each offered a different richness and depth of color, a subtle nuance appreciated only by those who understood the art. And the senators would share tales of merchants who traveled great distances to procure the finest materials. Some would speak of a recent purchase from a vendor who had traveled from the far reaches of the empire, bringing exotic inks from across the seas. These inks, infused with unique pigments, offered vibrant hues, but at a price. Senators would nod knowingly, recalling the expense and the careful budgeting required to maintain their supplies. As the senators continued their tasks, they would often take a moment to reflect on the storage of their materials. Each senator had a designated space in their desk, a section reserved for inkpots, quills, and parchment. The desks were often constructed from solid oak, with compartments carved to fit each item perfectly. This careful organization allowed them to keep their tools close at hand, ensuring a smooth and efficient workflow. The senators would also take care to clean their tools after each use. They understood that the longevity of their quills depended on proper maintenance. A small bowl of clean water would sit at the edge of their desks, ready for rinsing. After using the quill, they would gently dip the tip in the water, swishing it lightly to remove any residual ink. Once cleaned, they would delicately wipe the quill on a soft cloth, ensuring that no moisture remained. This ritual was repeated with the ink pots. After their quills were prepared and their ink was fresh, senators often turned to the parchment that awaited their thoughts. Parchment, a smooth and durable surface, was made from animal skins, carefully processed and stretched to create a perfect writing medium. The senators would often admire the texture, running their fingers over its surface, appreciating the smoothness under their touch. It was important to them that the parchment was free of wrinkles or blemishes. They would inspect the sheets closely, holding them up to the light, ensuring that each piece was suitable for their important work. The senators would carefully select the sheets they deemed worthy, setting aside any that did not meet their standards. Once the parchment was chosen, the senators would begin to organize their writing schedules. Each senator had a specific time allotted for their tasks, carefully mapped out in a shared calendar. They would gather in the early hours of the morning, the soft glow of the oil lamps illuminating their workspace. This time was cherished, a time for reflection and quiet thought, free of distractions. As they began to write, the senators would often take a moment to settle their minds. They would breathe deeply, allowing the tranquility of their surroundings to envelop them. The sound of quill on parchment, soft and rhythmic, would fill the air. Each stroke was deliberate, each letter carefully formed. They understood that the act of writing was not simply about words, but rather a deeper connection to their thoughts and ideals. The senators would often engage in a gentle back and forth, discussing their thoughts as they wrote. Each would pause to listen carefully to their colleagues, allowing the ideas to meld and evolve. This collaborative spirit was an integral part of their routine, fostering connections and understanding among them. Oh, hours would pass in this serene atmosphere, punctuated by soft rustling of parchment and the occasional flicker of oil lamps. The senators would remain focused, their quills moving smoothly across the page, capturing ideas, drafting laws, and sharing visions for the future. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over their workspace, the senators would know that their day of writing was drawing to a close. They would take a moment to reflect on their progress, reviewing the pages filled with their thoughts. The satisfaction of seeing their ideas materialize on parchment filled them with a sense of purpose. Before leaving their desks, the senators would carefully store their quills back in their holders. Each quill would be placed gently, tips facing upwards to avoid damage. The ink pots would be sealed, ensuring the ink remained fresh for the next day's work. They understood that the commitment to the craft required attention, each step a vital component of their shared legacy. Nay, with the tools of their trade securely stored, the senators would rise from their seats, stretching their arms and rolling their shoulders to release any tension. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, inhaling the faint scent of ink and wood, feeling a sense of calm wash over them. Finally, they would step away from their desks, leaving behind a space that held the echoes of their thoughts and the whispers of their collaboration. Dimau, designed. As the senators departed from their desks, the soft rustle of parchment faded into the background, giving way to the quiet sounds of the Roman evening. The tools of their trade stood sentinel, waiting for the next day's deliberations. Every quill, every pot of ink, and every sheet of parchment represented not just words, but the very essence of governance. The senators, steeped in their routines, understood the importance of proper care and maintenance of their writing instruments, particularly the quills that brought their thoughts to life. In the dim light of their chambers, a dedicated assistant would often be tasked with the responsibility of maintaining the quills. This assistant, trained in the subtle art of quill sharpening, would approach the task with a methodical calm. He would gather the necessary tools, a small whetstone, a fine cloth for polishing, and a bowl of clean water to ensure the quills remained supple. The assistant would select a quill, often a feather from a goose or a crow, prized for its flexibility and precision. Each quill was chosen with care, its length measuring approximately 30 centimeters, with the tip tapering to a fine point of about 1 millimeter. This precision was crucial for crafting delicate letters and intricate strokes. The assistant would hold the quill in one hand, gently positioning it against the whetstone, ensuring that the angle was perfect, around 45 degrees, a position that allowed for even sharpening. Slowly and gently, he would draw the quill across the stone, applying a delicate pressure, allowing the quill to glide rather than scrape. This motion required patience, as the assistant would repeat the process several times, taking care to sharpen only a small amount at a time. Each stroke of the quill against the stone produced a soft, soothing sound, a rhythmic whisper that filled the quiet room. After several passes, the assistant would pause to inspect the tip, ensuring it had taken on a well-defined point. He would then dip the quill in the bowl of water, allowing the feather to absorb moisture, enhancing its flexibility. This step was essential. A dry quill would produce scratchy lines on the parchment. With the quill prepared, the assistant would next turn his attention to polishing. Using the fine cloth, he would gently wipe the shaft of the quill, removing any excess moisture and ensuring the quill was clean. He understood that a polished quill not only looked impressive, but also facilitated smoother writing. Once this was completed, he would carefully place the sharpened quills back into their designated holders. Each holder was crafted from fine wood, often intricately carved, with slots that cradled each quill, tips facing upwards. This respectful storage avoided damage and maintained the integrity of their tools. The assistant would often count the quills, ensuring that each one was accounted for. Withy. The process of quill sharpening was not merely a chore. It was a meditative practice. Many senators found solace in the knowledge that their quills were expertly cared for, ready to transform their thoughts into written words. There was an unspoken etiquette surrounding the sharing of quills among senators. When one senator lent a quill to another, it was accompanied by a small gesture, a nod or a gentle smile, acknowledging the trust placed in the elder's care. Quills would often be exchanged during collaborative sessions, where senators gathered to discuss policies and draft new legislation. The act of sharing a quill was a symbol of partnership, a connection forged over ink and ideas. As the senators discussed various matters, they would pass the sharpened quills back and forth, each one continuing the thread of thought that had begun with another. During these sessions, the senators would maintain a schedule, dedicating time to sharpen their quills before each meeting. They would allocate a specific half hour, perhaps the first half of the hour, ensuring that they had ample time to prepare. This routine was vital. It set the tone for their discussions and allowed for a flow of ideas that felt both organized and spontaneous. In this tranquil setting, the senators would often reflect on the significance of their tools. The quill, though simple in design, was a crucial element of their existence. It represented not just the physical act of writing, but the weight of their responsibilities. They understood that the precision of the quill directly influenced the clarity of their thoughts. A well-sharpened quill could lead to clear expressions of complex ideas, while a dull one could lead to miscommunication. As the evening deepened, the senators would enjoy a moment of quiet reflection. They would settle into their chairs, taking time to breathe deeply, inhaling the mixture of wood and ink, feeling the weight of their collective knowledge. The atmosphere was serene, punctuated only by the soft sound of quills being polished and sharpened. The senators would often gather around a shared table, where they could ensure that all their quills were ready for the days ahead. This communal approach fostered a sense of camaraderie. They would engage in light conversations about the art of writing, the importance of a keen edge, and the subtle nuances of ink flow. During these discussions, they would emphasize the importance of the quill's point. A fine point, they would say, offered greater control and finesse. They would share tips on how to achieve this sharpness, discussing the various types of stones and how different angles could alter the quill's performance. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, the senators would finally gather their sharpened quills, a collection of finely pointed instruments ready for the tasks ahead. Each quill, a testament to their dedication, sat neatly arranged on the table, glistening softly in the candlelight. The atmosphere felt thick with the promise of ideas waiting to unfold. Yet the world outside remained still, cradled in the embrace of night. Wandava. With a final glance at their tools, the senators would rise once more, stretching gently, preparing themselves for the night's rest. They understood that tomorrow would bring new debates, new ideas, and new quills to sharpen. As they left their chambers, they felt a sense of peace, knowing that every detail of their craft had been attended to with care and precision. They would awaken refreshed, ready to wield their sharpened quills with purpose. Ah, aye. As dawn began to break, the senators would rise early, their bodies gently stirred by the soft light filtering through their chambers. They would begin their day with a routine that felt almost meditative. The first task, a simple yet significant one, involved the careful selection of quills. Each senator would have their preferred type, often a delicate feather from a goose or a swan, chosen for its flexibility and durability. In quiet contemplation, they would examine the quills, noting the shape and texture of each one. The senators understood that a well-chosen quill was essential for the art of writing. With a gentle hand, they would run their fingers along the shaft, feeling for any imperfections. If a quill felt rough, it would be set aside, destined for a different purpose. The next step was to gather their sharpening tools. Each senator would possess a small personal sharpening stone, often made from a fine-grained material like slate or a specific type of sandstone. They would take great care in selecting the stone, as the quality of the sharpening surface directly influenced the final point of the quill. The sharpening routine was methodical. First, they would dampen the stone slightly with a few drops of water, enhancing the sharpening process. This moisture would create a slurry, allowing for a smoother sharpening experience. The senators knew precisely how much water to use. Too much, and the quill would slip. Too little, and it would not sharpen effectively. With the stone prepared, they would hold the quill gently, focusing on its tip. The senators would position the quill at a slight angle against the stone, about 30 degrees, allowing for the perfect contact that would create a fine point. They would draw the quill across the stone in a slow, deliberate motion, taking care to maintain this angle. Each stroke was purposeful, and the senators often found a rhythm that mirrored their breathing. Slow and gentle, they would draw the quill forward, then lift it carefully away, pausing to inspect the tip. They would repeat this motion, perhaps 5 to 10 times, depending on how much sharpness was needed. With each stroke, the senators felt the connection deepen, not just with their quill, but with the tradition they upheld. The act of sharpening was not simply functional, it was ritualistic. It demanded patience, focus, and an appreciation for the delicate balance between the stone and the feather. Every senator had their own preferred method of sharpening. Some favored a back-and-forth motion, while others preferred a single directional stroke, always toward the tip, never away. This was a point of etiquette among them. To sharpen away from the tip was seen as careless, a sign of disrespect towards the quill and the craft itself. Once they felt satisfied with the sharpness, the senators would inspect the quill tip closely. A fine point should be smooth, without jagged edges, allowing for fluid movement across parchment. They would often test the tip by lightly touching it to their fingertips, noting how it glided effortlessly, leaving a whisper of a mark. If the quill was not yet to their liking, they would return it to the stone, repeating the process until it felt just right. This attention to detail was crucial, as the quality of the quill directly influenced the clarity of their writing. A well-sharpened quill could mean the difference between a clear argument and a muddled thought. Once all their quills were sharpened, the senators would set them aside, allowing them to dry in a small container made of clay or simple wood. This container was often adorned with intricate carvings, reflecting their status and the care taken in their craft. The senators understood the importance of storage. Quills required a gentle environment, away from dust and dampness. Each senator would have a designated spot in their chambers, perhaps a small desk or a shelf where the quills could rest peacefully, awaiting the day's discussions. While the quills settled, the senators would take a moment to prepare their writing surfaces. They would unroll large sheets of parchment, often made from carefully treated animal skin. Each sheet was smooth, an intentional choice, as the senators valued clarity and precision. They would lay the parchment flat, smoothing out any wrinkles with their hands, ensuring a perfect writing surface. The senators often kept a small pot of ink nearby, typically made from a combination of soot and water, mixed with a binding agent derived from natural sources. This ink, rich and dark, would flow smoothly from their sharpened quills, allowing for elegant script and clear communication of their ideas. They would often check the ink level, ensuring it was sufficient for the day's discussions. If it ran low, they would take the time to prepare a fresh batch, carefully mixing the ingredients to achieve the right consistency. As they prepared their writing materials, the senators would often engage in quiet conversation. They might share insights about the best sharpening techniques they had learned over the years, or reminisce about past debates where the fine point of their quills had played a crucial role in their art. This exchange was soothing, a reminder of their shared purpose and the bond they formed through their craft. The senators understood that this meticulous preparation was essential, not just for their own comfort, but for the integrity of their work. They would remind one another of the importance of patience, of taking the time to ensure that every quill was ready, every sheet of parchment prepared. This collective understanding fostered an atmosphere of calm and focus, a space where ideas could flourish. With their quills sharpened and their materials arranged, they would gather in their meeting hall, a place steeped in history and echoing with the voices of their predecessors. They would take their seats, settled and ready, their sharpened quills resting lightly in their hands. The debates ahead would be infused with the care and precision they had cultivated through their morning routines. Each senator would take a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the weight of their quill, the smoothness of the parchment, and the richness of the ink. They were ready to engage, to share, to listen. And in doing so, they honored the simple, yet profound art of ink precision. As the senators settled into their seats, the whole embraced them with an air of tranquility. The faint scent of ink wafted through the room, mingling with the subtle aroma of polished wood from the tables upon which they rested their parchments. Each senator, with their quill poised and ready, could feel the familiar routine wash over them like a gentle tide. They would begin by reviewing their supplies, ensuring that each item was in its designated place. The quills, meticulously sharpened to a fine point, lay in neat rows on the smooth surface of the table. These fine instruments, crafted from the feathers of geese or swans, were a testament to the dedication of their makers. Senators often preferred quills that were not too rigid, allowing for a graceful flow of ink with each stroke. The ink itself, a rich blend of soot and gum arabic, was stored in small clay pots, each one carefully sealed to prevent drying. Senators would take turns replenishing the ink supply, ensuring that it was always fresh and ready to flow. The pots would be placed within easy reach, a gentle reminder of the importance of accessibility in their shared workspace. As they prepared their materials, senators would engage in soft conversations about the proper storage of these tools. It was common knowledge that quills should not be left in direct sunlight, as this could cause the delicate feathers to become brittle. Instead, they would be housed in shaded compartments, wrapped in soft cloths to protect them from dust and damage. Little by little, they would discuss the merits of various storage methods, each senator contributing their insights, each opinion valued and respected. Once their tools were arranged, the senators would turn their attention to the parchment. Each sheet, carefully manufactured from the fibers of papyrus or animal hide, was an essential canvas for their thoughts. Senators often favored parchment of a specific weight, measured in grams per square meter, as this ensured the right balance between durability and smoothness. They understood that a heavier parchment would absorb ink more readily, while a lighter sheet would allow for a more delicate touch. Each senator might take a moment to run their fingers over the texture of the parchment, feeling the subtle ridges and valleys. This tactile experience was an integral part of their ritual. They appreciated the difference between a finely finished surface and one that bore the marks of rough production. Such details, though seemingly minor, played a vital role in the clarity of their written words. Next, they would examine their ink pots and quills once more, ensuring that everything was in order. It was customary to check the consistency of the ink, swirling it gently with a finger or a spare quill to ensure that it had not settled. Senators understood that the right consistency made all the difference in the world. Too thick, and it would clump. Too thin, and it would run. After confirming the ink's quality, the senators would begin to draft their notes. They would take turns leading discussions, each senator contributing to the flow of ideas with their newly sharpened quills. It was common practice to allow each senator a specific time to share their thoughts, a process that encouraged patience and respect. In this way, they cultivated an atmosphere of calm deliberation, one where every voice mattered. As they wrote, the senators would focus on their posture. They understood the importance of physical comfort in this meticulous work. Shoulders relaxed, they would adjust their seating to find the perfect angle for writing. Each quill would glide gently across the parchment, the ink flowing effortlessly from the tip, forming letters that danced and twirled across the page. With every stroke, they would be mindful of their surroundings. The flickering glow of oil lamps illuminated the room, casting soft shadows that seemed to breathe with them. It was a serene setting, one that allowed their thoughts to emerge freely, unencumbered by the distractions of the outside world. They cherished this time, this space, where they could engage in the art of ink precision without haste. The senators often dedicated a specific time each day for this ritual. It was a sacred appointment in their calendars. Each morning, at the break of dawn, they would gather, refreshed from their night's rest. They understood that these moments set the tone for their day, allowing them to approach their legislative duties with clarity and focus. As they wrote, they would occasionally pause to reflect, considering the implications of their words. They had learned to embrace silence, allowing the quiet to fill the room, a gentle reminder of their purpose. In these moments, they would set down their quills, leaning back in their chairs, and breathe deeply, savoring the stillness. This rhythm of writing and reflection created a soothing cycle, one that lulled them into a productive trance. Each senator would often find themselves lost in thought, the noise of the outside world fading into insignificance. The simple act of ink precision became a meditative practice, a way to connect with their ideals and ambitions, little by little, slowly and gently. As the writing session progressed, they would exchange quills, each senator allowing their neighbor to experience the weight and balance of their preferred instrument. This sharing was more than just a practical consideration. It was an expression of camaraderie, an acknowledgement of their mutual respect. They would discuss the merits of different quills, the subtle nuances in how each one responded to the parchment. Some senators preferred a lighter quill, one that allowed for quick movements, while others favored a heavier quill, offering greater control. Each senator's choice was a reflection of their individual style, a testament to their personality. And so, they would experiment, testing each quill's performance, delighting in the differences that emerged as they wrote. With every written word, they honored the traditions of their predecessors, the very senators who had shaped the course of history through their own quills and parchment. They felt a connection to the past, a sense of continuity that anchored them in their work. The weight of responsibility intertwined with the lightness of the ink, creating a balance that set the stage for their deliberations. In this sacred space, surrounded by the tools of their craft, the senators engaged in the ordinary yet profound art of ink precision. They were aware that each detail mattered, from the sharpening of the quills to the mixing of the ink. Every aspect contributed to the larger whole, a reflection of their dedication to their roles and to one another. And so, the day would unfold, peaceful and predictable, as the senators continued their work, quills dancing across parchment, ink flowing steadily, minds engaged in the gentle exploration of ideas. The soothing rhythm of their words would echo softly within the hall, creating a symphony of purpose that resonated with both the past and the future. Ah, hi. As the senators settled into their routine, they began the gentle process of quill sharpening. Their tools were simple yet essential. A small blade, often made of iron, and a smooth stone, polished over time. They understood that the sharpness of the quill directly influenced the clarity of their thoughts, the precision of their words. The senators would take a moment to prepare. They would carefully select a quill from their collection, usually crafted from the feathers of geese or swans. These feathers, chosen for their flexibility and strength, would be inspected closely, ensuring that they were free from imperfections. Once a quill was selected, the senator would position it on a sturdy wooden surface. This surface was often the aged table that had borne witness to countless discussions. With a gentle hand, they would take the small blade and begin to shave away the tip of the feather. This process required patience, as a slight miscalculation could render the quill useless. Little by little, the blade would glide along the edge, creating a fine point. The senators were ever mindful of the angle, not too steep, yet not too shallow. A perfect point would allow for smooth writing, while a dull quill would leave uneven lines on the parchment. This attention to detail was paramount, as clarity in writing mirrored clarity in thought. They often used a specific angle, approximately 30 degrees, a technique passed down through generations. With each careful stroke, they felt connected to the tradition of their predecessors, those who had sharpened their quills in the same manner. After achieving the desired sharpness, the senators would check their work. They would delicately test the point against their parchment, a gentle touch to see how well it glided across the surface. If the quill caught on the fibers, they would return to the stone, adjusting the angle ever so slightly until the quill sang across the page. Once satisfied, the senators would turn their attention to the storage of their quills. Each quill was placed carefully in a designated holder, often fashioned from clay or wood, designed to keep them safe and organized. The holders were arranged in a specific order, usually by size or by the feather's origin, a methodical approach that reflected their orderly minds. Alongside the quills stood containers of ink, rich and dark, carefully mixed to achieve the desired consistency. The ink was often made from a blend of soot and gum arabic, with water added to achieve the right fluidity. Senators understood that the balance of these ingredients could affect the ink's flow and permanence. The ink was stored in small glass or clay vials, each sealed to prevent drying. The senators would take care to ensure that the vials were clean and free from any residue, as even the tiniest speck could disrupt the smooth application of ink to parchment. Before commencing their writing session, they would dip their sharpened quills into the ink. They would observe the ink's consistency, ensuring that it clung to the quill just enough to allow for fluid writing. Too much ink could lead to blotting, while too little could result in faint lines. A moment of silence will envelop the whole then, as they collectively prepared to write. They understood the importance of etiquette during these moments. Quiet respect for the surroundings was maintained, allowing each senator a few moments of reflection before the ink met the parchment. As they began to write, time seemed to stretch. Each senator would take their time, measuring their thoughts as carefully as they had measured their quills. The rhythm of their writing, the soft scratching of quills against parchment, created a calming atmosphere, allowing each senator to immerse themselves in their ideas. Occasionally, they would pause to admire their work, ensuring that the ink flowed evenly, the lines straight and confident. They would sometimes share their thoughts with a soft murmur, seeking feedback or deliberating over the phrasing of a particular point. Their discussions were gentle, marked by a shared understanding of the importance of clarity and precision. With each passing hour, the cycle of sharpening and writing would continue. The senators were aware of the rhythm of their work, an unhurried pace that allowed for contemplation and reflection. They often took turns, one senator rising to sharpen, while others remained immersed in their writing. This careful exchange ensured that every quill maintained its sharpness, every ink pot remained full. It was a communal effort, a shared responsibility that deepened their bonds and respect for one another. They would sometimes discuss the prices of quills and ink, as the senators were well aware of the economies surrounding their tools. A good quill could cost a modest fee, while fine ink, especially those with vibrant colors, could demand a higher price. The discussions were devoid of urgency. They understood that their work was worth the investment. As the sun traced its path across the sky, the senators would occasionally take breaks, gentle pauses from their writing. They would stretch their arms, relax their shoulders, and breathe slowly, allowing the day to unfold at its own pace. Such moments of respite were important, providing an opportunity to reflect on their work thus far. They would sip from small cups of water, ensuring to keep themselves hydrated, as they understood that a clear mind required a nourished body. And so, the day would continue, marked by a series of gentle routines. The sharpening of quills, the mixing of ink, the flow of thoughts onto parchment, all these elements intertwined in a delicate dance of history. Little by little, the senators crafted their legacies, one quill stroke at a time, as they embraced the tranquility of their work and the weight of their purpose. They moved through their tasks with care, allowing the mundane to become sacred, each moment treasured as they navigated their responsibilities. With each soft scratch of quill on parchment, they felt the connection to the past and the legacy they were building for the future. They understood that within the simplicity of their practices lay the power to shape thoughts, ideas, and ultimately, the world around them. In this serene environment, they found solace. They found peace. They found purpose. Ah, as the senators diligently engaged in their tasks, their quill sharpening procedures were not merely functional, they were ritualistic. Each senator possessed a personal set of tools, carefully chosen for both comfort and precision. The tools included the quill itself, made from the feathers of geese or swans, prized for their flexibility and ink capacity. The quills were typically about a foot long, with a tapered end that required meticulous attention. To prepare the quill for writing, the senators would first examine the feather for any irregularities. They would hold it delicately in their hands, feeling the smoothness of the shaft and the softness of the barbs. Often they would select a quill that had been harvested in the early spring, when the feathers were fuller, yet still light enough to glide effortlessly across the parchment. Once the quill was chosen, the senators would reach for their sharpening tools. These tools often included a small knife, known as a penknife, which featured a narrow, slender blade specifically designed for precision. Each senator might engrave their initials on the handle, a personal touch that made the tool their own. With the blade resting against the quill's tip, they would draw it downwards, applying gentle pressure to create a fine point. This process required patience, as an improperly sharpened quill could lead to uneven ink flow, leading to smudged letters and frustrated thoughts. The sharpening process was carried out over a small, sturdy table, often adorned with a simple cloth to catch any shavings. The senators would methodically rotate the quill, ensuring that the point was evenly shaped. This rotation allowed for a gradual taper, transforming the flat end of the feather into a finely honed writing instrument. In addition to the knife, a small piece of sandstone or a whetstone was sometimes employed. The sandstone had a pleasing texture, slightly rough, facilitating the honing of the quill's tip. Each senator would stroke the quill against the stone with deliberate, rhythmic motions, producing a satisfying scraping sound. This sound became a part of their daily environment, a soothing backdrop to their thoughts. The senators understood that sharpening a quill was more than a simple act of preparation. It was a moment for reflection. Each stroke of the knife or stone was accompanied by a soft breath. They inhaled deeply, allowing the scent of the ink and parchment to fill their senses, and then exhaled slowly, releasing any tension that may have lingered in their shoulders. Once the quill was sharpened to perfection, the senators would carefully dip it into the ink, ensuring that the point was saturated, ready to transfer thoughts onto the parchment. The ink was often made from soot and gum, mixed with water, creating a rich consistency that flowed smoothly. The senators would keep their ink pots close at hand, each crafted from clay or glass, providing a stable vessel for their writing. The ink was not merely a tool, it had a life of its own. Some senators preferred a deeper black, while others enjoyed a blue hue, derived from natural dyes. The choice of ink reflected their personality and style, subtly influencing their written words. Each senator understood the importance of maintaining their ink pots, ensuring they sealed them properly after use, preventing the ink from drying out. The parchment, too, played a vital role in this serene process. Created from animal skins, it could be smooth or textured, depending on the desired effect. Senators often had their own preferred parchment suppliers, often establishing relationships built on trust and quality. They understood the value of a well-prepared surface, one that would allow the quill to glide effortlessly, capturing their thoughts with clarity. As they engaged in this rhythmic routine, the senators often kept a schedule, allowing time for both sharpening quills and reflecting on their work. Each day began with the dawning light, casting a gentle glow on their workspace. They would dedicate the early hours to sharpening their quills and preparing their ink, ensuring that they were ready for the tasks ahead. This morning ritual set a tranquil tone for the day, fostering a sense of calm as they transitioned into their discussions and decisions. During the midday break, the senators would often gather in small groups, exchanging thoughts not only on politics, but on their shared experiences of sharpening quills and creating ink. Ink. I doubt what a soul, a dusty word then, yet. These conversations, although seemingly mundane, held a deeper significance. They fostered camaraderie, allowing each senator to learn from the others. How did one senator prefer to sharpen their quill? What techniques were employed to ensure the finest point? Each discussion contributed to the collective knowledge, enriching their practice. Storage was another careful consideration. Senators would keep their sharpened quills in specially crafted holders, often made from wood or metal, designed to protect the delicate points. These holders were lined with soft materials, ensuring that the quills did not become damaged in transit. Each senator would take pride in their holder, often selecting one that matched their personal aesthetic. As the day transitioned into evening, the senators would take stock of their work. They would gently clean their quills, removing any excess ink and preparing them for the next day. This process was soothing, a final act of care before the day closed. They would wipe the quills with a soft cloth, ensuring that they would remain in prime condition. Ultimately, the art of quill sharpening was interwoven with the very fabric of their lives. Each senator understood that the sharpness of their quill was directly tied to their ability to express their thoughts, to articulate their vision for Rome. The process was a quiet, meditative practice, one that allowed them to find peace in the simplicity of their tasks. As they settled in for the night, they reflected on the day's activities and the quiet satisfaction of a well-sharpened quill. Each senator drifted to sleep with the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more opportunities to hone their skills, to express their thoughts, and to contribute to the ongoing tapestry of Roman history. Little by little, they would continue this gentle, purposeful journey, one quill stroke at a time. They seemed key. As the senators awoke each morning, they would begin their day with the same quiet routine. The sun would rise, casting soft light through the windows of their chambers. The first task would often involve their writing tools. Each senator would reach for their quill, a slender instrument crafted from the feather of a bird, most commonly a goose, known for its flexibility and ability to hold ink. The quills were stored in a dedicated space, often a small wooden box lined with soft fabric to protect the delicate tips from damage. This box, sometimes ornately decorated, would sit upon their writing desks, a constant reminder of the importance of their craft. Before using the quills, they would inspect each one carefully. They would hold it up to the light, examining the tip for any signs of wear or fraying. If the tip appeared dull, the senator knew it was time for sharpening. This would be a gentle process, requiring patience and precision. The sharpening tools were simple, yet effective. A small, smooth stone, often referred to as a whetstone, would be placed on the desk. This stone, with its fine grit, was essential for honing the quill to a fine point. The senator would hold the quill at a slight angle, carefully dragging the tip of the quill against the stone. This action was performed with great care, as the angle and pressure had to be just right. Too much pressure could split the quill, while too little would leave it dull. As they sharpened, the senators would often find a rhythm in the movement. Slowly and gently, they would draw the quill across the stone, listening for the soft, soothing sound of quill scraping against stone. Each stroke was deliberate, each motion meditative. They would repeat the process several times, checking the tip after each few strokes, ensuring that it was achieving the desired sharpness. The senators understood that a well-sharpened quill could dramatically affect their writing. A sharp quill would allow for fluid strokes, creating letters that flowed effortlessly from the page. Conversely, a dull quill could lead to frustration, blots of ink, and poorly formed letters. Thus, they approached this task with reverence. Once the quill was sufficiently sharpened, the senators would take a moment to clean it again. They would dip the quill in a small bowl of water, gently wiping it against the fabric of their tunic or the soft cloth beside them. This would remove any residue from the sharpening process. The senators took pride in this small act of maintenance, recognizing that a clean quill was a reflection of their character and dedication. After the cleaning, each senator would turn their attention to the ink. The ink used was usually made from a mixture of soot and water, sometimes combined with a binding agent, such as gum arabic. The preparation of this ink was an art form in itself. The components would be carefully measured, ensuring the right balance for consistency and color. The ink would then be stored in small glass vials, often sealed with cork to prevent drying. As they prepared to write, the senators would open their vials with a soft pop, releasing the scent of the freshly mixed ink. They would dip their quill into the ink, allowing the tip to soak for just a moment. This step required another careful balance. Too much ink could lead to unsightly blobs, while too little would leave the writing faint and incomplete. With the quill now ready, the senators would settle into their writing positions. They would find comfort in their chairs, ensuring their posture was relaxed yet attentive. The parchment before them was smooth and crisp, a perfect canvas for their thoughts. The senators would hold the quill lightly, their fingers guiding it softly across the surface of the paper. As they began to write, the senators would take their time. Each letter was formed with intention, each word chosen carefully. They understood that their writing was not merely a task. It was a means of communicating their visions for Rome, a way to influence their peers and shape the future. The rhythmic motion of the quill gliding across the parchment was soothing, a gentle dance that brought a sense of peace to their busy minds. Occasionally, a senator would pause. They would lay down their quill and take a moment to reflect. They might sip from a small cup of water or herbal tea, allowing themselves a brief respite. These moments were sacred, providing them with clarity and focus. After a deep breath, they would return to their task, the quill ready to continue its work. Throughout the day, as ideas flowed, the senators would repeatedly sharpen their quills. The act of sharpening became a comforting ritual, a necessary interlude in their writing. It was a moment to reset, to reflect. They would engage in quiet conversation, sharing thoughts on the day's matters, while the sound of quills scratching against stones filled the air, adding to the ambience of their chambers. In the late afternoon, the senators would often gather for discussions. They would bring their quills with them, ready to jot down notes or thoughts that would emerge during their meetings. The act of writing in these moments was fluid and natural. Each senator, with their sharpened quill, would add their voice to the chorus of ideas shared. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the windows, the senators would reflect on the day's work. They would gather their notes, ensuring that all ideas were recorded, all points raised documented. They would take one last moment to clean their quills, preparing for the following day. Each senator knew that the sharpening of their quills was not only a matter of practicality, but also a symbol of their commitment to their roles. As they closed their writing desks for the day, they felt a sense of satisfaction. They understood that every quill stroke contributed to the larger narrative of Rome. Each senator would drift off to sleep, cradled by the thought that their sharpened quills would be ready for a new day, for new ideas, and for the continued journey of their lives in the service of the Republic. Slowly and gently, they would close their eyes, letting the rhythm of their day guide them into rest. As the senators prepared their quills for the next day, they would begin by gathering the necessary tools. Each senator had a dedicated space for their writing implements. This space was often a small wooden drawer, carefully crafted and polished, resting within their desks. Inside, they kept a selection of quills, each one uniquely shaped and chosen for its specific purpose. The quills varied in size, with some being slender and delicate, while others were broader, designed to accommodate heavier ink flows. Next, the senators would retrieve their sharpening tools. A simple but essential item, the sharpening knife was often made of bronze or iron, with a comfortable grip that allowed for precision. The blade, thin and carefully honed, was kept within easy reach. Senators understood that a well-sharpened quill made all the difference in their writing. It was a matter of clarity and style, as the angle of the nib affected the ink's flow. With the quill in hand, the senators would begin the sharpening process. They would hold the quill at a slight angle, resting it against the sharp edge of the knife. Slowly and gently, they would draw the quill across the blade, applying just the right amount of pressure. This action was both rhythmic and calming, a ritual that brought focus and tranquility. As they sharpened, senators would take care to maintain a consistent angle. The ideal angle was around 30 degrees, creating a fine point that would hold ink effectively. It was a delicate balance, as too steep an angle would lead to a harsh line, and too shallow would result in a dull point. They would repeat this process several times, turning the quill as needed to ensure an even sharpening on all sides. The senators understood the importance of the ink itself. Each quill would be dipped into a small inkwell, often made of glass or ceramic, which held the liquid they would use for writing. The ink was usually a deep black or dark blue, prepared from a mixture of soot and gum arabic, sometimes infused with other natural dyes for variety. The senators would take care to keep their inkwells clean, wiping them with a soft cloth after each use. After sharpening, the senators would assess their work. They would carefully test the quill on a scrap piece of parchment, ensuring that each stroke flowed smoothly. The sound of the quill gliding across the surface was a soothing sound, a gentle whisper of ideas taking form. If the quill did not perform as expected, they would return to the sharpening process. It was a matter of pride and professionalism. Once satisfied with their quills, the senators would turn their attention to storage. Each quill had its designated place within the drawer. Some senators preferred to keep their quills in a small, soft pouch that protected them from damage. Others utilized a simple wooden rack, allowing the quills to stand upright, ready for use. This organization was important, for a disheveled workspace could lead to distraction and disarray in thought. In addition to their quills, Senators often kept a small selection of parchment at hand. The parchment was made from animal skin, meticulously prepared and stretched to create a smooth writing surface. It was typically sold by the sheet, and senators would purchase their parchment in bulk to ensure they had enough for their daily correspondence and notes. The cost of parchment varied, depending on the quality and size. Senators would often discuss the pricing with their suppliers, ensuring they received a fair deal. They understood that quality mattered, for a good piece of parchment would absorb ink well, preventing smudging and feathering. This attention to detail was essential in their line of work, where clarity of thought was paramount. As they organized their materials, senators would often reflect on the etiquette of writing. They understood that the act of writing was not merely a mechanical task, but rather a ritual steeped in respect for the ideas being shared. When addressing their peers, they would take care to use appropriate titles and forms of address, ensuring that their communication was both clear and courteous. In the early hours of the day, before the meetings commenced, senators would engage in their writing routines. They would often arrive early at the Senate, quietly preparing for the discussions ahead. The quiet hum of activity in the background was a gentle reminder of the responsibilities they carried. They would take a moment to breathe deeply, settling into their seats, feeling the weight of their roles. With their quills sharpened, their ink wells filled, and their parchment neatly arranged, senators would begin their day's work. They would start by reviewing notes from the previous day's discussions. This part of their routine, though seemingly mundane, was essential for continuity. They would read through their carefully written notes, adjusting their thoughts as needed, adding clarity to their positions. As the morning light filtered through the Senate chamber, illuminating the space, senators would engage in quiet discussions with their colleagues. The atmosphere was serene, the sound of soft voices blending harmoniously. Each senator would contribute their thoughts, making use of their sharpened quills to jot down key points or reminders. The rhythm of writing became a soothing backdrop to their conversations. Throughout the day, as debates unfolded, senators would continue to refine their quills. They understood that the flow of ideas might sometimes require a quick adjustment. If a quill became dull during a passionate discussion, a swift sharpening could restore its effectiveness. Senators would take this opportunity to step aside, using their trusted knife to hone the quill back to perfection, readying themselves to capture the next brilliant thought. The senators knew that this process was not merely functional, but also a reflection of their dedication. The sight of a well-maintained quill, the smooth flow of ink upon parchment, all symbolized their commitment to the Republic. This rhythmic cycle of sharpening, writing, and reflecting was a meditative practice, creating a sense of calm that permeated their work. As the day transitioned into evening, the senators would once again gather their materials, taking special care to store their quills and ink properly. Each quill would be returned to its resting place, its point protected, awaiting the next day's discussions. Slowly and gently, they would close their writing desks, knowing that the routine of quill sharpening would begin anew with the dawn. Within the quiet of the chamber, the senators would take a moment to breathe deeply, letting the weight of the day settle into a peaceful rhythm. They understood that their routine, from sharpening to writing, was a crucial part of their identity as public servants. Each stroke of the quill, each careful choice of words, contributed to the larger tapestry of governance. And as they prepared to leave, they would carry with them the knowledge that their quills, sharpened and ready, would be waiting for them when the sun rose again. She. Ah. As the senators departed from the chamber, the gentle sound of their sandals echoing softly along the marble floors. They carried with them their sharpened quills, their freshly inked documents, and the weight of responsibility that came with governance. The day had been one of discussion and deliberation, yet it was the quiet ritual of quill sharpening that lingered in their minds, a meditative practice that heralded both the end of one day and the beginning of another. Upon arriving at their homes, they would prepare for the evening's quietude. Each senator had a dedicated space, often a small study, lined with shelves filled with scrolls and tablets, each bearing witness to their thoughts and decisions. In this sanctuary of reflection, they would carefully place the quills into a small, ornate box, crafted of polished cedar wood. The box was not only a vessel, but a symbol of respect for the tools of their craft. Inside the box, each quill found its designated slot, nestled among soft cloths to prevent any damage. The senators understood the importance of proper storage. A quill left unprotected could risk being dulled or, worse, broken. They paid close attention to the condition of their writing instruments, knowing that the delicate balance of ink and tip was essential for the precision of their work. The quills, often crafted from the feathers of geese or swans, had to be treated with care. Each feather was selected for its strength and flexibility, ensuring that it would serve them well during the hours of writing to come. No, ma'am. Each evening, the senators would review their supplies, ensuring that their ink, made from the rich pigments that could be found in the earth, was fresh and ready for use. The ink was stored in small earthenware pots, sealed with wax to prevent it from drying out. They would test the ink's consistency, dipping the quill gently into the pot, watching the way it clung to the tip. As the senators settled into their evening routines, they would often reflect upon the measurements used in their craft. A well-sharpened quill could produce lines of varying widths, depending on the pressure applied. A lighter touch would yield a fine line, suitable for delicate notation, while a firmer grip could create bolder strokes, ideal for proclamations and formal correspondence. The senators would practice this skill, slowly and gently, manipulating the quill to achieve the desired effect. The act of sharpening, too, was a measured process. Each senator kept a small sharpening stone, often made from fine-grained sandstone or whetstone, close at hand. The stone was typically about 6 inches long, a comfortable size to hold in one hand. With the other hand, the senator would grasp the quill firmly, angling it just so against the stone. In a rhythmic motion, they would draw the quill across the stone, first one side, then the other, applying just enough pressure to create a fine point. This process might take several minutes, as they carefully honed the point to perfection. They understood that the time spent in sharpening was an investment in the clarity of their thoughts. After sharpening, the senators would often take a moment to admire their handiwork. The fine tip of the quill, glistening slightly in the dim light of their study, was a testament to their dedication. The process was almost ceremonial, a quiet acknowledgement of the importance of precision in their communication. They would visualize the words that would soon flow from the tip of the quill, each letter forming a bridge between thoughts and action. The evenings were often quiet, filled with the soft sound of parchment being unfurled. Senators would review their notes and document their thoughts, reflecting on the day's discussions. The rhythm of the quill against the parchment was soothing, a gentle scratching sound that filled the air as they wrote, each line a cohesive thread in the fabric of governance. As they settled into their chairs, they would often light a small oil lamp, its warm glow casting soft shadows around the room. The flickering light created an atmosphere of contemplation, allowing the senators to lose themselves in the process of writing. They would pause often, considering each word, each phrase, the weight of their responsibilities resting lightly upon them. In the midst of their writing, they would occasionally stop to sharpen their quills once more. The cycle of sharpening, writing, and reflecting was a comforting routine. With each stroke, they found a rhythm that resonated within, a dance between intent and expression, thought and action. The ink, dark and rich, would flow seamlessly from the quill, each line forming the framework of their thoughts. As they wrote, they would observe the way the ink pooled and spread upon the parchment, each letter a careful construction, each word a deliberate choice. The senators took pride in their ability to articulate their ideas clearly and concisely, understanding the power of language in shaping the republic. The evening would pass slowly and gently as they continued to pour their thoughts onto the parchment. Sometimes they would pause to listen to the quiet of the night, the distant sounds of the city settling into slumber. In those moments, they often found clarity and inspiration. They would breathe deeply, allowing the tranquility of the night to fill their minds and hearts. With each passing hour, they would feel the weight of their eyelids, a gentle reminder of the day's end. They knew that soon they would rest. But first, there was the sacred task of preserving their thoughts and the sharpening of their quills for tomorrow's endeavors. The cycle was endless, yet comforting, a routine that bound them to their purpose. As they prepared to conclude their evening, the senators would carefully place their quills back into the box, ensuring each one was nestled safely among the soft cloths. They would store their ink in a cool, dark place, allowing it to maintain its quality for the next day's work. They understood that the evening was a time for rest, but also a time of preparation, for morning would bring new discussions, new debates, and the ever-important task of sharpening their quills once more. With the final strokes of the quill, they would take a moment to reflect on the day's work, the weight of their responsibilities resting gently upon their shoulders. The rhythmic cycle of sharpening, writing, and reflecting had once again offered them solace and clarity. And so, they would close their study door softly, knowing that in the stillness of the night, their quills would await them, sharpened and ready, for another day of service to the Republic. In our exploration of the Roman Senate's quill sharpening procedures, we gently uncovered the meticulous art of preparing writing instruments for the important task of recording history. We traveled through the rhythmic motions of selecting the finest quills, the careful sharpening with meticulous tools, and the soothing sounds of parchment being prepared for ink. Each step revealed a quiet dedication to precision, a dance of diligence that ensured every word was captured with clarity and care. As you settle into your quiet room, imagine a soft night enveloping you, your body resting comfortably, and your mind drifting peacefully. Allow the tranquility of these ancient routines to wash over you, bringing a sense of calm and reassurance. If you enjoyed this gentle journey through history, consider subscribing or leaving a comment to share your thoughts. And remember, turn on loop so you can revisit this serene exploration as often as you wish. 1.